Hello and welcome everyone to episode 4 of The Learning Zone, the podcast that takes learning seriously but not itself. I'm joined by my ever so elegant co host, Rob Pierce, who's actually dialing in from somewhere a little different today. Rob, how are you and where are you dialing in from?
Hey Rob, well, as you can see from my quite busy background, I'm actually away for the Easter weekend and enjoying some downtime with the family in the thriving metropolis of East London. Weather hasn't necessarily played its part, but enjoying the family time and a bit of rest and relaxation. How about you?
I'm dialing in, heading to the office on the weekend, which is actually a bit of a quiet time, which is quite nice. But for those that are dialing in, listening on the podcast here today, Rob is definitely embodying his father-in-law's office, which looks like a cave of a baby boomer. I see a printer, a home printer, which I haven't seen in quite a while, and I don't think many people have that nowadays. I actually realized that when I had to print something myself for personal reasons, I didn't have a printer at home. So it's nice to see that the home printer market is still operational. So that's always good to see.
Yeah, look, this office is pretty busy. The topic we're going to cover today, it could have some pros and cons in relation to unlocking innovation, but it could do with some cleaning out and a bit more minimalism because it's very, very busy. But yeah, we do what we can. We spoke about having a weekly podcast, and here we are
Yeah,
recording our fourth episode.
yeah, trying our best. And one thing about a busy office, I think it was Albert Einstein that said something around, having a busy desk means you have a busy mind, but having an empty desk, does that mean you have an empty mind? So just something to think about.
Yeah. So as we work virtually, Rob, how have you been? Are you busy working or are you hardly working during this
Yeah,
downtime?
that's it, right? Working hard or hardly working, right? Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the idiosyncrasies of working from home are playing its role. I kind of work hybrid. I think as we discussed, I kind of go to the office some days because I need that. I work from home, but I actually had an incident with a friend who said to us one of their people they had started working with, they'd worked with for 7 months, and she actually only announced her maternity leave coming up and no one knew that she was pregnant. She hadn't told anyone, but because they'd only ever interacted with the head and shoulders of her, they couldn't see her growing belly over the last 6 months. And I think that's going to be more and more common, and it actually makes me think that I could let myself go and not be so embarrassed over time if people are just interacting with my head and shoulders.
Yeah, talk about interacting with Head and Shoulders. I think as you are aware, we had an interesting situation last year where we were presenting a critical piece of work to a new client, and trying to work virtually with my 3.5-year-old running around in the afternoon, having come home from school. I was often acutely aware of trying to mute myself so that they couldn't hear the noise in the background. And while I ignored him for a period of time while he escaped from the clutches of my helper at home, he managed to throw almost a 500-gram Tyrannosaurus Rex, which hit me in the side of the head in the middle of a meeting,
Great
which,
choice.
yeah, it's classic. I had numerous people laughing while I was trying to not show the pain. Um, but these are the joys of where we find ourselves now, of trying to find places to work and keep busy and look like we're doing things that we need to be doing whilst we work virtually.
Yeah, and I must say, I remember that incident well because it actually drew blood. It was actually quite a serious cut. It wasn't just a playful knock to the head. Luckily, Ollie, your son is quite cute. He's quite a handsome young man. But yeah, I have noticed that you have definitely flinched a lot more whenever you see toy dinosaurs in the room. So it must be part of that trauma you've induced.
Yeah, exactly. So, whilst we get into the session here, if on the YouTube channel that we're launching this week, if you see in this recording me looking around, you'll know why now. I'm looking around to safeguard myself and make sure that I don't have another injury while whilst working virtually.
Yeah, just avoiding some flying T-Rexes. Um, so Rob, I think Let's get into it. I mean, this is a topic we are quite excited to talk about. It's something that's come up on the radar a lot. We work with almost all of the learning executives in Southern Africa and Africa at this point, and it's been a big topic that people are looking for right now, not only in the corporate space, but also brought to the forefront during the pandemic, and that is innovation. Everyone is looking to be more innovative, not only from a competition or business performance perspective, but for the agility that was needed during the pandemic. And I mean, there's been so many great examples of that, and so many reasons why people are looking to be more innovative and more creative in the way that they do things.
Definitely. We've obviously, we're at the forefront of a lot of research with both of us being, closely involved with applied neuroscience research and leadership development. But, both the World Economic Forum and Josh Bersin, who was an associate of the Neuro Leadership Institute, spoke last year very strongly about some of the most critical developmental needs that had arisen during change and during the pandemic. And interestingly enough, the three biggest leadership competencies, or the three most critical leadership competencies that came to the fore, were innovation being number one, critical thinking being two, and creativity three, which I think speaks to the importance of these skill sets in relation to how we work in this ever-changing world.
Yeah, and it's actually amazing that those three have come up. And I actually read a follow-on from that report, because previously people would call those things soft skills. Those are the soft skills of leadership, right? Innovation, creativity, critical thinking. But they've now reframed those, and internationally they're now going by the name of power skills, because these are the superpowers of leaders, and these are the things that robots can't do. Because anything that is mundane and that can be automated will be automated. But the things that can't really be automated, innovation, creativity, or at least not yet, are becoming those power skills and are becoming those sought after skills for entrepreneurs and for business leaders. I mean, there's actually some great examples that happened during the pandemic, and I was sharing a bit before. There's actually so many to actually choose from, but just some of them that come to mind are really fascinating. There's that famous example of the pizza place in Chicago. The guys couldn't sell pizzas because of COVID regulations, so they were able to innovate by buying plastic and then using their pizza oven to make face shields for the local hospital to get revenue, where that innovation actually allowed their business to survive. There's also been great examples of disruptive entrepreneurial businesses. My current favorite is Canva. Canva is a business that helps you design anything in the graphic design world, and TikToks and videos and CVs and just beautiful documents. And it actually was developed by a lady that is my age. And 10 years ago, she was at university. She was studying graphic design and got frustrated that the software felt very clunky. It was hard to use. Spoke to her dad. They decided, well, why don't we make this on the cloud? Why don't we make this, software agnostic? Anyone can use it. And that business has grown so much that it's now worth 8 billion US dollars, just from someone studying at university thinking, nah, it's got to be an easier way to do this, right? And now that's 8 billion US dollars, and she's my age. It's a nice way to feel that you've really achieved something when you hear stories like that of someone your age. And I think that last great example is actually from a personal friend of mine. Um, he's a director at an African cleaning business, and they were faced with a unique problem during COVID. They are a cleaning business that does cleaning contracts for major gyms and hotel chains, and they won the contract for a large bank to clean their ATM, their cash machines around Africa. And they were struggling because they don't have people in these different countries. They also need to hire cleaning staff that were mobile and had smartphones to clean and take pictures. So if you have to, rapidly grow your workforce for people that have their own transport, have a smartphone, but you can't pay them that much, what do you do? And they innovated by actually hiring Uber drivers, because Uber drivers have their own transport, they have their own smartphones, and they were able to fulfill the requirements of that contract by cleaning these ATMs or these cash machines 3 times a day. And the most amazing part of that is during that process, the bank actually found out, because now they had someone on the ground taking a picture of the clean machine 3 times a day. They identified at least 50 machines that they were paying for that weren't in service or didn't exist. And
Those
there's
are,
so many great examples of innovation, where innovation is not only competitive, it's not only saving money, but it's also creating new industries from scratch.
yeah, those are such inspiring stories. I love stories like that. I think what's come to mind when you mention those stories is those are typically quite entrepreneurial stories where people have looked to find opportunities in this crazy and volatile world that we're living in. But what we've seen more so now than ever is that innovation is not just a nice to have. It's an essential part of businesses being able to evolve and improve drastically over time, so that they don't become stagnant in their evolution, so to speak. But we often see that in these large organizations and corporates that we work with, entrepreneurship and innovative thinking is often not necessarily acknowledged, being recognized or even measured effectively. And so how do we create spaces where people can be innovative to try and really push the envelope and try new things, so that within the spaces they work in and the functions they perform, they can help the business get that much better? And I think entrepreneurial competence that you've mentioned now is very key, and a large skill set within entrepreneurial competence is being innovative and dynamic.
Yeah, and I think that's also why we framed the learning zone with that in mind. It's really about understanding, you know, how do we bring some of the best parts of entrepreneurial thinking to leadership development, but also with the understanding of science and practical experience. And that's what I want to get into now, is the real science of this innovation. I mean, it's very clear at this point that innovative thinking is disruptive. It leads to not only surviving and being agile, but also thriving. But what is the science behind innovation? And that's something that we're very fortunate to be exposed to. And there's actually quite a bit of research in that space. Creativity and innovation is its own discipline in its own field. But there's a particular thing that we want to talk about today that really focuses on the science of the eureka moments, the aha, I've got it moment. And for those of you that struggle with or not familiar with some of that referencing, that talks to the moment of Archimedes, that famous philosopher and physicist that discovered volume and density was, able to be measured when he took a crown into a bathtub. And I encourage everyone to look up the story, but the basic premise of it is he had a eureka moment, an aha, I finally got it. And he was so motivated by that moment, and he was in the bathtub at the time, that he ran down the street naked. That's the legend, or that's the myth, that he had that eureka, I've got it. I've got the game-changing idea that's really going to transform our understanding of physics, really, for the rest of time. And that eureka moment is something that's been studied in scientific circles. It's called the moment of insight. And now the moment of insight really happens under four conditions. But before I get into those four conditions, let me just check, Rob, because we talk about when we have our best thinking, our moments of insight. Where do you have your best thinking, those eureka moments where your brain is suddenly, fireworks are popping off and you finally got it? Where are you and what are you doing when that happens?
Yeah, it's amazing, Rob. When we look to try and solve vexing problems or challenges that we face in the work that we do, you and I often, we vacillate between different ideas and things that we can do to overcome them. But typically, we don't come to a solution that's best placed to enable us to get to where we want to be. And my insights definitely occur when I have those quieter moments. It's either, for me, typically it's when I'm exercising, either on a run, or when Ollie's riding his bike and we're going on a walk, or when it's just I'm absolutely doing nothing. I'm not, consciously focused on the problem itself. And I'm able to look inward and acknowledge the different voices in my head. And suddenly, our brain's incredible. It's inherently trying to connect things in the world. Suddenly that idea, pops into my mind out of nowhere. And I go, oh, there we go. That's what Rob and I, or the team within our business should start to think about, or maybe we could utilize. So it's typically in those quieter moments. I don't know about you. When do yours occur?
Sure. Mine definitely have in happen in the shower for me, almost regularly. A little bit when I exercise, but mainly in the shower. I find that's definitely a moment for me. I'll be washing my hair, and that's when I'll be winning that argument that I should have won back at work, or I'll be figuring out why we can't solve that, that one problem with margin at the business, or how things could be more effective if we did things differently. And it's always amazing. I don't go into the shower to meditate, and I don't have that plan, but that's inevitably how it happens. And
Yeah.
it's almost very similar to the Archimedes example. He was in the bathtub, right? Or legend has it, right, that he was in the
Yeah.
bathtub when he had the eureka moment. But scientists have studied this moment in detail, and what you'll find is a lot of similarities, because other people say it happens when I'm driving a car, I'm in the shower, I'm doing exercise, I'm listening to music. And I encourage the people that are watching or listening to this to reflect for a moment, to think, when do you have that eureka moment? What are you doing? Are you driving a car? Are you exercising, etc.? Because there's actually four conditions that encapsulate all of these moments, and these are the conditions that will create insight. These are the four conditions that will lead you to have more innovative thinking. And science has shown that these four conditions are really just this: you must be quiet, internally quiet, not thinking about a lot of different things. You should be internally focused as well, slightly positive, and most importantly, not focusing on the problem itself. So you've got to be quiet, internally focused, slightly positive, and not focusing on the problem itself. And if you think about those situations, going for a walk, listening to music, exercising, in the shower, it's all those conditions, right? And it's funny because we still try and solve for creative and innovative thinking by having board meetings when we're intently focused on the problem, right? When we all focus at the same time, it's almost a threatening situation. And I understand that it's not always possible to develop this, but some of the best leaders have realized that the best ways to create innovation, and only for problems that require that kind of innovative thinking, they don't have board meetings, they don't have brainstorming. They incorporate these four conditions into different activities.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so, I would implore everyone to try that out. Is we spoke about this in a previous episode of creating that optimal performance state. Yet we get to work and we want to execute, to the best of our ability, and we prioritize the things we need to tick off and complete in a day. But we're not creating that intentional space to unlock our best thinking. So how do we make sure we create those intentional pauses, dampening down our prefrontal cortex, which many call our executive thinking brain, so that we can use our unconscious brain to solve some of these biggest challenges. We speak of moving from impasse to insight, and insight happens when you do those four things you just mentioned, Rob.
And it's amazing because it's almost counterintuitive, right? We think that we must innovate, so we get around a table, get the brightest minds. Okay, guys, innovate. We've booked 90 minutes on the Zoom call. Let's innovate, right?
Mm.
But science shows that to have that innovative thinking, that true innovation, where the moments of insight is when you combined parts of the unconscious in a new and different way that literally creates a lightning strike of connection in the brain. It doesn't happen at a boardroom table.
Yeah.
More often than not, it happens under those four conditions: when you're quiet, internally focused, slightly positive, and not focusing on the problem at the same time. And that's and some of the ways you can do that is go for a walk, take a shower. Not all the time at office, it's not always practical, but no, we all have home offices. There's actually was a famous playwright in London that installed a shower in his office and had 6 showers a day during his creative process, because he understood that those showers created insight and creative thinking for himself. Um, and I think another part, before you figure out, what you want to do, and I'd love to hear some of your examples, Rob, because I know you have some great ones that you find, really personally impactful for you. The first part's also to realize, is the problem I'm trying to solve right now, does that require insight? Is this an insight problem? Is this a eureka problem? Because also, not all problems need that as well. Some problems require, let's get into the data, let's figure out the pros and cons, let's make a critical decision. And I think that should be probably our next episode around bias and critical thinking. But when you want to have those eureka moments, it's not around a boardroom table. What are
Yeah.
some of the ways that you've been playing with, Rob?
Yeah, I think just to take one step back, Rob, around the science, which I found really interesting, is a lot of the neuroscience research that's been done around the brain, and you mentioned the context and the states one needs to create in order to unlock insight. But what neuroscientists have found out is that insights actually fundamentally shift the functioning of the brain. The brain is non-consciously trying to detect new patterns all the time, and it's trying to link new concepts with previously established information constantly. And I think that's very powerful to make mention of, that as we go about our day-to-day unconsciously, we're trying to make sense of the world and link different things in our mental maps and our mental networks. But what neuroscientists have uncovered is that an insight actually has what they call as an acronym LEGS. It helps you learn something new, that's the L in LEGS, engage with people, it prompts you to engage and share your learning. It generalizes that insight across its application and benefit in different contexts. And there's fundamentally systemic change forever and a day in the brain. So in short, it's really helping you to go places with that insight and use it where it's best suited. So just simply put is, if you think of that acronym LEGS, is when you have an insight, you learn something fundamentally new, and you have that really good feeling. There's a number of hormones that are dumped in the brain, and what happens then is there are signals that are sent from your emotional brain to your hippocampus, which is the regional part of the brain which locks in longer term memory and helps you flag ideas that you can use in the future. And I think that's very, very powerful. So a new neural pathway is fired, and your brain will never be the same when you have an insight. Secondly, is a number of reward mechanisms are triggered in the brain when you have an insight. So it's prompting you to inform people and share your insight broadly. And I think when you think about innovation, broadly speaking, and what happens when you have an insight, it's driving you to collaborate and share that
Yes.
insight reward broadly. And then
Yeah,
the
it's
last two
almost like
pieces.
Archimedes running naked down the street. So I hope less people would be running naked down the streets after having some of these insights, but at least they'll be motivated to do that. And I think that just speaks to the actual power of them and the motivating force behind them.
Exactly. I think you can attest to this, and the same with members of our team. When we have insights, we always rush to tell the person what we think, what we've come to realize, and the idea we have, and whether they feel it's relevant and applicable. And it's amazing when you see people have an insight, you see that expression on their face change. They actually have, a huge rush. You see their posture change and a huge smile stream across their face. And then the last two things around legs are, you learn something new, it drives you to engage through the reward triggers that occur in the brain. But you start generalizing when you solve a problem with an insight. It starts a process where you're more likely to see the pattern in other contexts and apply the solution elsewhere. And that's that connection mechanism in the brain, is new neural pathways are connecting existing knowledge to the new idea you have and how else it can be applied. And then lastly, the S in legs is systemic change. Your brain will never, ever be the same. And it's difficult to unlearn something you've come to learn through an insight, because that neural pathway has been fired and you can connect it to other neural pathways going forward. So I find that neuroscience research really, really powerful, is that it's your superpower. I think you mentioned it earlier. If you can generate insights more often than not, you having those legs across multiple contexts, where you can unlock, the really best thinking within your teams and within the businesses that you work.
Yeah, I think that it's a great example, Rob, and I think that's almost why they say an insight is an idea that has legs. It has far-reaching consequences. It's more motivating if harnessed correctly, and also can lead to actual behavior change. I mean, that's why we actually use it in a lot of different coaching applications as well. And it's really why you want to have more insights in yourself and insights in others. Um, Actually, another great example that from a corporate perspective is the company Slack. Slack is a global tech company. Many corporates use their software for collaboration, But unlike other major tech companies based in the San Francisco Bay Area, they don't have a lot of, or at least before the pandemic, they didn't have a lot of extra things to make you stay at work for longer. You go to Facebook or Google, and I was very fortunate to actually do a little bit of work at Facebook. They have, free ice cream machines. They have pet services. They have, you can actually go grocery shopping at the business. You can do so much stuff there. Your dry cleaning, your laundry. You can get petrol filled into your car on campus. There are so many things built there to keep you at campus to work inevitably for longer, for harder, all that sort of great stuff. That's synonymous with the tech industry. But Slack is different. Slack have nothing. They say when you're done your work at 5, please go and do your hobbies. Go do your rock climbing club. Go and walk your dog. Go and spend time with your family. Go and have other interests outside of work. Don't work here longer, because we want to bring some of that thinking into the business. We want you to go join your rock climbing community, have those insights and bring it back. We want you to go hop on your bike. We want you to go play your PlayStation, whatever your games or whatever your things are, your hobbies, go and do them, because they realize that the longer working hours don't always breed better thinking. And in actual fact, for better thinking, you need to do more insight activity. And again, it's not around a boardroom table.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think, if, as we said, it's almost like a leadership and organizational development superpower. Is that if you can unlock innovative thinking and bring people to insight more often than not, particularly as a leader, if you can focus on unlocking the full potential of the individual through the way that they think and help them solve their challenges themselves rather than you telling them what to do, it really does, change the dynamic of the way the business functions and works and collaborates. So, yeah, I think it's been, a really, really, I think, interesting topic to cover, and I hope we can do some more around more neuroscience pieces around innovative thinking, because, as we've said now, the case for innovative thinking is very, very profound.
It's almost as more important than it's ever been. And I think not only from a scientific perspective, I'm also very excited to launch and talk about more of our more of the research that's emerging in wellness right now, because wellness is really becoming one of those superpowers to unlock performance. And we're actually very excited to announce and talk about something new in the future. So please stay tuned for that. And I think, Rob, just in closing, I think I just want to thank all the listeners and the people that are viewing, and then also give them an actual reminder of how we do this show. I mean, myself and Rob are both in the learning zone ourselves. We always are experimenting and trying. And one of the ways that we actually do this is we do it live, one take. There is not a lot of scripting. So you see us all, warts and all, on our recording, our different mics, our different cameras. It's definitely on the weekend and after hours. And that's why we're trying this one take wonder, and we appreciate some feedback. So if you think this was helpful for anyone, please share it with them. You can find us on LinkedIn. We've started a page, and you can listen to us on where all good podcasts are listened to. So please subscribe, please rate and review, and please do share some feedback as well as we continue to learn and experiment in various iterations of this podcast journey.
Cheers, Rob. Bye, listeners. We'll chat soon.
Chat soon. Have a good one.